My mic was switched off. Good day, guys. Rukshan here. I hope you can hear me. Let me know if the audio is coming through nice and clear. But welcome to another episode of Rukshan On X, a very casual look at the news that's been happening, of course, provided mostly by the time that I spend on Elon Musk's X platform. And I got a few stories to actually go through today that happened from the start of the week, which are quite interesting. And of course, as I do always for this live stream, I will be reading out your comments and responding to your comments as best as possible. As you can see, the comments do appear on the side of the screen. So what you write does appear on the show. I'm very lenient when it comes to censorship. I try to avoid it as much as possible. So only violent threats and derogatory remarks towards other people that might be insightful will I remove. But otherwise, love to engage with all of you guys, and your comments show through. And I've seen, watching back on previous live streams, because it's hard to kind of keep up when you're doing it live, people having their own little conversation within the comments. So it's always fun to watch it back after. But look, I hope you guys are well. Hope you've had a great start to the week. I'll just pull up some comments as I go as well. Thanks, mate. Yep, confirmation that you can hear me. So I've increased the audio as well. I've always get complaints about audio. I need to get some sort of mixer that boosts my audio a little bit. So there's a little bit of tiny issues while I get this set up right. But overall, I think it's coming through a bit louder and clearer. So that's always good. I like to read the comments from the trolls as well. I don't know if this is directed towards me. It probably is. You are a scum, mister, go away. So, look, I mean, I enjoy people hate watching my content and helping the algorithm with the engagement. So, as long as you're here, Johnny, Atman, and watching, if you want me to go away, you can just turn off the show. You don't necessarily have to tune in, but you got your 2 cents in, so that's always good. G'day, Daniel. Thanks for joining in for another show. Someone's looking for a car, I think. There you go. That's cool. G'day, Alex. The government will wipe anything derogatory in the future. Well, that is a topic that I've got to be covering today as well, a bit around censorship. UK-based, but it's an interesting story nonetheless, and it kind of touches on perhaps the direction that Australia's headed in as well, with a lot of the vilification laws and things which are coming into place. So I want to touch on that. But first up, the kind of big news story that I've been laughing about since yesterday is the threats by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese towards Elon Musk. I'm sure many of you guys have seen this story now, at least if you're following me. I shared it across my pages, and there was a lot of interaction on this particular story, with Anthony Albanese making a preemptive threat towards Elon Musk about not meddling in the Australian federal election. So it seems to me that Anthony Albanese is very worried about Elon Musk potentially saying something during the election time, maybe hosting an X Spaces discussing issues in Australia, maybe even just making fun of Albanese and that becoming a part of the news. I'm not sure why he's made this preemptive threat. Maybe it's because the EU has made threats to Elon Musk, and Keir Starmer in the UK has also made threats towards Elon Musk to tell him to keep away. Of course, we know he exposed the grooming gangs in the UK and made that a big story again. So Elon Musk does have a bit of influence in terms of discussing news items in a country during an election time or in politics in general, and making it a big deal with the platform of X. Now, that is not necessarily, illegal or anything like this. We live in the West. It's free speech societies, apparently. I know many of you will laugh at that as well, but that's just how it is. We talk about politics. How many times do Australian leaders and so on comment about US politics? And, many in the left would be saying, things about Donald Trump and telling people to vote for Donald Trump. We also famously have Anthony Albanese's right-hand man in the US, the ambassador of the United States of America, Kevin Rudd. What kind of nonsense has he talked about when it comes to the US, and especially attacking President Donald Trump and now President-elect Donald Trump? So, Australia is not without, interfering in foreign politics whatsoever. And of course, we interfere in all types of politics when it comes to our neighbors, especially these smaller Pacific islands. So they'd have a lot to say about these kind of words coming out from Albanese about how you can't have foreign interference in Australia. And I haven't even touched on things like our relationship with countries like China and many of the ways that they're interfering within the Australian political system as well. So let me know what you guys think of this. I will get to some of your comments about Albanese as well. That's right. E. Karen might be listening. Hello, E. Karen. I'm sure she's listening. I must be on the E. Karen list for sure because I keep talking about E. Karen and highlighting her ridiculous, ridiculous attack on Australian civil liberties through her so-called E-Safety Commission. Yeah, look, Rudd is surely a Gonski. I think, Kevin Rudd, when it comes to the ambassador, it's just a bad look for Australia. And if Anthony Albanese had any type of backbone, he would have packed up Rudd a long time ago and replaced him. Trump is our new daddy. Well, yeah, when you look at US-Australian relationships, America already has a great influence on Australia. I wouldn't call it, interference or this kind of thing. Just by the nature of the relationship, American politics and American policy has a big influence on Australia. But let's get to the story. I'll just share my tweet that I put out yesterday. Let's bring up the screen. So Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has publicly warned Elon Musk not to get involved in the upcoming federal election. This is the quote that he gave to Channel 9 in an interview, I think the Daily Telegraph maybe, or Sydney Morning Herald, sorry. We have foreign interference laws in this country and Australian elections are a matter for Australians. The photo attached to this X post is unrelated. Now, in that photo, of course, it is not Elon Musk in the photo. It's one of Anthony Albanese's preferred billionaires, which is someone that's no stranger to many of us in this space. And that is, of course, Bill Gates, the former Microsoft boss and now World Economic Forum stooge that travels around the world. And I think in Australia, he's set up some deal to release genetically modified mosquitoes. I might find that article as well. So, depending on the type of billionaire that you are, Anthony Albanese doesn't necessarily have a problem with you interfering in Australian politics. And the funniest part of all of this is once, everyone started sharing these kind of posts, and this one actually got around a lot, almost 2,400 shares on X alone. And it was so great because so many people had additions of content around this. And this is a very famous one that we all remember. This is Shaquille O'Neal. Now, I'm pretty sure Shaquille O'Neal is an American basketball player, a celebrity that Anthony Albanese saw no problem in bringing into Australia, or when he was in Australia, bringing him on board to promote The Voice the Voice campaign, right? So he had no problem then with Shaquille O'Neal, a foreigner, according to Anthony Albanese's own words, trying to push the Voice to Parliament through by helping him spruik it to the Australian public. And I'm pretty sure there was a few other celebrities, MC Hammer and so on. So isn't this exactly the same type of thing? I think it is. This is exactly the same type of foreign involvement in election. In terms of Musk just using his platform to talk about it, it's even less interfery, if that's even a word, than whatever's happening right here. So, Anthony Albanese is just a walking hypocrisy. Whatever he says, you can always find something where he's done the exact same thing. And for some reason, according to the people that support him and Anthony Albanese himself, well, there's nothing wrong with any of that. And that's just one example. This is him meeting with Larry Fink, apparently, which is the CEO of BlackRock. So, of course, we all know what BlackRock gets up to around the world, and he's not meeting Anthony Albanese just for fun. So there's something in place when these kind of meetings happen with these type of influential people, and it's not you can't necessarily say it's interference in an election, but it's definitely these foreign entities, these foreign lobbyists, these groups getting involved in Australia in some manner, promising things or things for exchange. So it happens. Just Elon Musk talking about the election is not necessarily something that Anthony Albanese needs to be worried about. Bill, Rukshan is in favor of free speech. Avi can't handle it. Imagine that. Well, I'll get to that later. I always like to bring up comments about Avi Yemeni. I find it very entertaining. What's this comment here? Bill gatekeeper to Epstein Island. I mean, yeah, this is a questionable individual that our prime minister invited into Kirribilli House, into the residence, and this is after knowing everything we know about his relationship with Epstein. So, even his wife, Bill Gates' wife, Melinda Gates, potentially left after some of these details may have become known. She got a very good deal when she divorced Bill Gates. So, I'm not going to make any accusations, but, if you look into it enough, he's a kind of a shady character. But let's have a look at Bill Gates from around the time that he met Anthony Albanese on this video.
One brilliant way to pull your...
We don't want to see ads. Maybe I should get YouTube Premium for this account as well.
Government's energy price caps are beginning to put downward pressure on the market, with future prices dropping by a third. The turnaround coming amid high-level meeting at Kirribilli House, billionaire Bill Gates, hosted by the Prime Minister.
Open gates at Kirribilli.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Bill the billionaire welcomed by the PM and his pooch. The Microsoft founder in Australia with his foundation and his company Breakthrough Energy, aiming to accelerate sustainability and reduce greenhouse gases.
I love coming to Australia.
Well, can I welcome you here very much? We haven't met before, but I've admired your work.
Both the founders.
I just paused at that. It seems so awkward. He seems so giddy to meet Bill Gates, and this guy is coming to release mosquitoes into Australia. Let's keep playing this.
Foundation and Breakthrough Energy are excited about the things we can do together.
The pair discussed pandemic preparedness, climate change, and the global energy transition amid energy challenges here at home.
You're very welcome here.
New figures out today suggest power...
I'll stop that there. So I just wanted to play that last part. You're very welcome here. So Albanese, of course, like I mentioned it right at the start of this, welcomes billionaires, welcomes foreign advice and involvement in Australia, as long as it's people that are amicable to him and his type of ideology and his politics. So, yeah, BS from Albanese when it comes to this so-called threat towards Elon Musk. And look, I really hope, I don't even think Elon Musk really cares about Australian politics as much. Of course, he's commented on the e-safety commissioner, E-Karen, and a few other issues around censorship. But overall, Australian politics isn't a major point of focus. Our elections, especially overseas, they're pretty meaningless things overseas, even though they're very important to us back home. But just out of spite, maybe he might get involved now. Depending on what Albanese says in the future, maybe there'll be something that comes up. Maybe I've even suggested that Elon Musk, he's known for hosting these spaces with political leaders. He's hosted them with like the PM of Pakistan. He's hosted them, of course, with Donald Trump. And recently he hosted it with a political party that's running in the election in Germany. So maybe it might be a good idea if Pete Dutton's people are smart enough to actually jump on with an X space with Elon Musk, just to kind of get the message out there, or even have a debate about Australian elections or policy or ways that the country can move forward, because it is the new form of media. Whether whether people like it or not, traditional media is not as being effective in getting to a lot of people in terms of viewership, and more people are online. So it might make sense for these politicians to actually engage with these type of platforms. But before I finish up with that story about Anthony Albanese, we just wanted to show you some more photos of him meeting dubious individuals. Barack Obama, I guess, is okay. He's a former world leader. But, Bill Gates, Larry Fink, and some other individuals, he's met Shaq. Come on, Albanese, you're full of crap. Let's see what you guys have to say about all of this. Albo is weak as piss, never had a job outside of politics. Yeah, I mean, he kind of disrespects Elon Musk a lot. But if you look at what Elon Musk has done, he's achieved a lot. And I'm not comparing the two comparatively, but Elon Musk is also contributing to our lack of good internet in Australia. Like, so many people in Australia make use of one of his tech companies, Starlink, to access the internet because our government's infrastructure is so woeful. Now, one of the promises that Anthony Albanese is making for the upcoming election is a $3 billion injection for the NBN network. And of course, he's blaming the previous administration in Australia and all these kind of things. But really, if you look at the situation right now, many people are using platforms like Starlink. Telstra, even the other day, introduced a new option with Starlink for some of their services around SMS in regional remote parts that might not have access to these cell towers. So Elon Musk is actually making a difference in Australia as well. So foreign interference or not, he's already a part of Australia in sense of his companies are actually assisting Australians. And of course, his technology when it comes to these batteries and solar and all these kind of things are also paving the way forward with many of these type of renewable things that the left loves as well. So Elon Musk is already interfering in a way in Australia by making Australia a better place. Now, I don't want to go down this part, but someone's saying Obama is married to a man called Michael. I did think it was Michelle and not Michael, but someone is saying it's Michael Obama. I think there's a photo of Albo meeting Avi outside the synagogue a few weeks ago. Very shady. Yes, shady indeed. Now, for the next story, guys, actually, before I jump to the next story, I also had Jackie Lambie, Senator from Tasmania, making a comment about this. Let's have a listen to Jackie Lambie, what she has to say.
$1 billion on NBN. Let's use him to our advantage. Don't worry about what he's going to do.
That's not
For
Jackie
heaven's
Lambie.
sake, we have compulsory elections. There is no way that he's going to have that effect. So
That misinformation has a lot of effect on politicians out there, and they can go for one politician and they can go hard. I'll be honest with you. He has that control and he has that power.
Let me just play that from the start. Just started.
We've lost control of Elon Musk. Let's be honest here. So unless you start putting in some laws that really affect him, or you cut off X from Australia, then this is the way it's going to be. But it's going to take a lot of courage to do that. I don't see any Prime Minister or opposition leader doing that because they're too worried about their own asses on
Maybe we
seats,
just
mate. Won't play on the platform. It is a disgrace.
let's embrace Elon.
So that's Jackie Lambie, Senator from Tasmania, Jackie Lambie's political party. And she's saying we've already lost control of Elon Musk. What we can do to stop him is because the Albanese is apparently not going to do anything to stop him. We should get rid of X. If we were brave enough, we'll just get rid of X completely. I think she recently, a couple of months ago, took herself off X as well. This is the level of the way that the politicians in Australia approach people just having discussions online. Like, they're so afraid of them being challenged by these platforms where they don't really have any control over our speech. Really, they try to. They've tried so hard, and in some respects they have with this under 16 ban and so on. But overall, right now, with something like X, it is a very powerful utility for Australians to use to discuss politics. And I don't think these guys like it one bit. And in terms of Starlink, this is a very good suggestion. Seriously, why don't we give government paid Starlink to remote Aboriginal communities? Yes, I mean, instead of spending $3 billion to develop NBN, which has been a disaster anyway, and who knows how long that will take, could we perhaps get some technology, some agreement with Starlink or a company like this? Of course, the better option is always for us to develop our own technology and not to be dependent on an outside, foreign company. As much as I like Elon Musk, at the end of the day, if we're going to have infrastructure in this country, it would be better to be, either controlled within an Australian company or by the government to some extent, at least at the initial phase of it. But, as the technology stands, if Starlink is the best solution that there is, and that's going to provide the best coverage for people and the fastest speeds, because, everything's online these days, then why not enter an agreement with a company like that and have that type of technology being used, because it seems to be very, very effective in its application. And yes, Jackie Lambie has lost the plot. someone is mentioning that they lost respect for her when she insulted the unvaxxed. I'll try to find that video right at the end because she lost her mind in the Senate chamber or wherever she was speaking during that time, and she was tyrants. But yeah, that's enough about Jackie Lambie. Well, I pull up this next story. Yeah, Ben's got a great comment here. The problem is we have too much bureaucracy in this country. Yeah, I mean, to roll out a modern internet infrastructure in Australia with the population metrics, I know the land mass is massive and there's some considerations you have to make, but you'd think that an advanced economy in the West, such as Australia, would be able to provide decent, reliable internet and mobile services for its people. That should be the minimum. And the fact that it's taken so long and that we're still talking about it and still injecting billions of dollars into it shows you like exactly what Ben says. There's so much bureaucracy, so much nonsense that's gone on in relation to the NBN that we find ourselves in this situation. I will admit, if you're in kind of metro Melbourne, built up areas, those kind of suburbs, there is a lot of options now in terms of good internet. Some of it's a bit more pricey, but I'm finding it's improved over a period of years. But it wasn't like that when it was first introduced, obviously, and many people had issues. Now, this next story is actually from the UK. I shared this earlier today in the morning, and some of you guys might have already seen it. And it goes to this around free speech and around the way that governments are trying to impose laws through sneaky methods to kind of control the way that people speak. Now, we do know that they would love to control online free speech, and that's somewhat challenging for a lot of countries, outside of the US, because, the major social media companies, at least, are based out of the United States of America, and they have very wide-ranging protections that protect their free speech. Like, for instance, like the First Amendment, all of these things tackle issues around free speech. But in countries like the UK and Australia, of course, by extension, we find these sneaky ways they try to stop us from discussing things that are important to us, especially criticizing controversial issues that the government might have different opinions on. Now, for this particular story, at first I didn't even believe that this is a thing, but apparently in the UK, they are looking at putting through a bill or these laws via some employment law that they're changing to make it, in a way, I'm just kind of using a bit of hyperbole here, but to make it unlawful, really, to say offensive things in a pub, as an example, where you're conversing with someone else at the pub. Apparently, if you say something that's offensive during that conversation, and someone who's listening in on the conversation overhears that and gets offended, you will be in breach of these rules or these laws, and you'll be told to leave or whatever. They're trying to formalize this type of free speech censorship that they're doing. So let's have a listen on to GB News. They had a good segment on this. I'll play, it's what goes for about 5 minutes. I'll play bits and pieces of it and we'll discuss it as it goes through. So let's have a listen in.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm delighted to say that we're joined in the studio by Nigel Nelson and Dr. Renee Hunderkamp for the first time on Britain's Newsroom. Well, not the first time, but the first time in a while as a regular, which is lovely. Right, can we talk about this free speech in pubs, Renee? What's going on here?
Renee.
Well, just madness, I think. Just more of this madness employment bill from Angela Rayner, which really needs to be scrapped. Because if we're getting to the point where people are not able to talk about anything they want to talk about in a pub, which is where you talk about anything you want to talk about.
Yeah.
It's over. Pubs are over, free speech is over. This whole bill is a disaster for employers and needs to be scrapped.
And because the Equality and Human Rights Commission is saying that if the way this bill could be interpreted, if you start giving your view on the transgender issue, for instance, someone can say, that's out of order.
Yeah.
Conversation over.
Your words offend me.
Exactly.
In my workplace, and therefore...
And the publican then may be required to end the conversation, throw them out the pub.
I mean, it really is 1984. We are living it now, isn't it? It's new.
So that's a great comment. It really is like 1984, but it's happening now. And to think that, you go to a pub where, of course, having a few drinks, conversations are usually lively. You discuss anything that's happening, sports. Sometimes you'll discuss politics and you'll say things when you're talking with your mates and, have a free-flowing debate or conversation. Well, apparently now that, could become somewhat illegal in the UK, which is just ridiculous. And the fact that this Labour government, Keir Starmer, after everything that's happened over the last few weeks, we've had the grooming gangs and all these kind of scandals, they're looking at things like this as well through these sneaky methods. It goes to show you how far countries are really falling in terms of protecting these things and how easily governments are finding ways to push more of this through. And we're having these type of laws introduced in Victoria as well, like these vilification laws. Some are already active. How they're going to be applied in workplaces and things, I am not entirely sure if it's the same as this, but it does seem a bit intense. Yeah, so some people are saying they have audio, some people are saying no audio. So it's really interesting. I'm not sure what that issue is, guys. That doesn't. It's pretty hard to figure out exactly why that's happening. It might be the device you're watching on. I'm not 100% sure. This is a great comment. Yeah, the government did incentivize snitching. Remember that. So yeah, of course, during COVID, the government did want everyone to listen in, eavesdrop on people having conversations maybe about a gathering that they're going to attend or not wearing a mask, and they did tell you to call up and dob in your neighbors. So it's an extension of that. I can see people, really abusing this, and like, what's the limit? So sometimes what we find someone else finds offensive isn't necessarily offensive. Like, there was some Nigel Farage was saying that perhaps if you're discussing veganism and you're making light of vegans, that those vegans might find it offensive. Now, some people might find it extremely offensive, but does that mean that speech should be limited in this kind of setting? I mean, it's ridiculous. And of course, when we talk about things like wars, or let's say you're talking about grooming gangs in the UK, because they have a massive issue with these Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs going around raping kids. Let's say you're discussing that in a pub and someone else is listening and they're offended because you're talking about, something to do with their particular ethnic group or whatever it is. Like, do we have to limit the way that we talk about things around other people because of, these real important issues which are happening out in society? Well, it might offend someone. It's a slippery slope. Obviously, we're already way down that slippery slope, but you're seeing them making it even more and more difficult for people to have just conversations. And of course, pubs throughout history has been a place where people gather, sometimes for just for partying and events, but a lot of the time just the locals gathering, and they discuss issues that are happening in their community. Let's have a look at the comments. Social credit score system is crazy. Why would we want this crap? 1984 stuff. Relax, people. Audio is fine. I really have to fix this audio thing. I will find a solution. I got to figure out what's happening to different people. Now, the next story that I have is one from the city of Melbourne. Now, this is something that verges on conspiratorial talk sometimes when we discussed this a few years back. And, there's been implementations of this in different ways. And even this particular implementation of this thing I'm going to talk about right now, it might not be anything nefarious or anything bad. It might actually be a positive thing. Who knows? But if we know anything about the history of how these things go, it does give us some concern when reading this job that they've put up, the city of Melbourne. So this is the city of Melbourne is looking for a smart cities pilot and trial specialist. I wonder what type of intrusive and dystopian technology the Melbourne City Council is looking to test out and implement on Melburnians as a wider part of the Smart Cities initiative. So I'm not sure exactly what this Smart Cities pilot and trial specialist will be doing and what technology they'll be testing, but definitely the city of Melbourne is looking for someone to test out this new technology or way of doing things that they're going to be trialing in Victoria. So it says, exciting opportunity to use emerging technology to shape our city's future. And the salary is between 120K to 132K plus super. It's a full-time position. So this was put up 4 days ago. Someone actually sent me this and I looked into it a little bit. So smart cities, we know the connection with smart cities and the World Economic Forum and other, climate style forums and groups around the world. So there is a bit of history of people talking about the implementation of smart cities. And we've seen in countries like the UK where they've put up these kind of cameras, the ULEZ systems. We've got these blade runners who'll go around and cut the cameras down. Usually with smart cities, it involves the city itself finding new ways to make people in the city or in the council areas pay more money to them somehow, right? Either through fining them, putting restrictions on usage of certain areas. Obviously, Melbourne is famous for adding bike lanes and getting rid of car parking spaces. So I always think when I hear anything to do with this from the city of Melbourne here in Australia, anything to do with smart cities is usually detrimental to the people in some respect. The technology might be good in some ways, but it might actually be, intrusive. It might involve surveillance. It might be that you have to pay more, a levy to go into the city to drive your car. It's usually something like this. It's implementation, which is normally the nefarious thing that they do. So let me know, should we be concerned about smart cities? There's a big list of things that this person's required to do. And it's interesting, who is a smart cities specialist? Are there specialists for such things? Let's have a read of some of your comments. Yeah, I've seen this comment come up a lot of time. Newsom saying the same thing for LA alarm bells. Well, LA, the wildfires, they've come in. LA is also a part of the similar initiatives that Melbourne is involved in. Someone actually shared that, which is the C40 cities. I believe LA is a partner in that as well. And if you go to C40 cities, you'll see that Melbourne, Australia is a part of that initiative. I'll just see all the cities actually, who we are. I believe this is the same thing that the LA was on. Anyway, I can't bring that up at the moment. But Sydney and Melbourne are part of that initiative. World Economic Forum, of course, has a massive influence on pushing out these smart city type things. Australia, Victoria also has a 20-minute neighborhood plan. So it's not a 10-minute city. We have a 20-minute neighborhood city. And by all intentions, it seems like a good idea because everything's kind of accessible for people within a 20-minute distance, apparently, in this new wonderful world that they're building for us. But who knows what drawbacks that comes with. And I think that plan is initiated between, a couple of years back until 2050, this whole revitalization of Victoria and the city of Melbourne. Melbourne sucks. I mean, I've lived Melbourne all my whole life, and it's an awesome place, but it has really taken a turn. Yeah, Melbourne is a twin city with Singapore. Smart Cities is just another part of the Resilient Cities Network. Look it up, brought to you by the Rockefellers. Bendigo is the trial smart city. Yeah, why are we always the guinea pigs? It does feel like that, doesn't it? If you're living in Victoria, you always feel like they're trying out these new things with Victoria, even Australia at large. And I think it's because of our population dynamics. Of course, the way that the legal systems, the parliamentary system is organized, it's much easier for them to kind of push these type of things through as well, where it's very difficult in the US to get certain bills pushed through, especially ones which infringe on people's rights. So those type of dystopian systems, it's always easy to test it on a public like the Australian public, especially in Melbourne. You saw during the lockdowns how easily people followed the government instructions, even when they knew perhaps deep down that what they were being asked to do didn't really quite sit right. They still went ahead with it. So we are a very obedient society when it comes to things. So it might be the reason that, we're always the guinea pigs here in Melbourne. We are financing our own demise. Let's hope. With smart cities will never happen. The globalists are on the way out. Well, it'll be interesting to see this year's World Economic Forum and the topics and the themes that they talk about and the types of people who attend and the types of talks that they give. But, this is a very interesting comment because there is a shift happening in the world with the election of Donald Trump and the posturing that the US is doing now. But they really do still want to push these kind of things through. And Australia is kind of resisting some of the changes that Trump is trying to push. So it'll be interesting to see. Lucy's got an awesome comment. Melbourne is broke. It won't be smart city for a long time. This is the thing. So some of these smart city initiatives are about actually building up revenue. And it's not always necessarily about helping the individual or that community. It's revenue raising. And they'll call it smart cities, and they'll introduce some, new AI-powered camera system that tracks cars, and, it'll give you a toll or something like this. It's kind of these kind of concepts that they come up with. So they look at it ways of revenue raising, but of course that money isn't really, used in a smart way in Melbourne. How much money have we wasted in this city on just nonsensical things that mean nothing to anyone, especially the bike lanes. And I know some of you guys might be bike riders, but there are some streets, like Exhibition Street here in Melbourne, where you have these massive bike lanes and they're only used for a short period of time, but for the rest of the time, it just creates these massive traffic backlogs, and it's just ridiculous the way they've done this. And someone's put here, Wodonga is already a 15-minute city. Everything is within 15 minutes drive, and all the mega corporate retail hubs. Yeah, I guess for some of the smaller regional areas, even the bigger regional towns, it is easier to implement this type of thing. All right, let's just jump across to the next story, and that is around Australia Day coming up. I know it's I'm getting very early in on this Australia Day hysteria that we have, and some of you guys might even be over talking about Australia Day, but so early. But I'm going to talk about it because even Peter Dutton, when he's launching his whole election bid for the upcoming election, he's really focusing in on Australia Day as well. So it might be reflective of the general mood of the public in terms of this. There was a story last week that I'll share today, which is around saying that 69% of Australians now support having the date of Australia Day as the 26th of January for the celebration. So let's listen into the story.
New polling has revealed that a majority of Australians are in favour of celebrating Australia Day on January 26, with surprisingly younger Aussies leading the surge. Australians aged 18 to 24 swung the largest, with 52% supporting the day compared to 42% last year.
It means every age bracket now supports keeping Australia Day where it is on the calendar, with 69% of all voters in favour. Opposition leader Peter Dutton joins us live in Melbourne now. Good morning to you, Peter. Do these results surprise you at all?
No, I think it's a great result, and I think it's a real reminder of the fact that we live in the greatest country in the world. And when you look around at what's happening in North America at the moment, in the Middle East, in Asia, we live in an incredible country. We have a great migrant story, an incredible Indigenous history, and we should celebrate all of it. And Australia Day is about exactly that.
New polling has revealed that a majority of...
I've got some more comments from Peter Dutton, so I'll just I think I just deleted that. Let me just try to bring it back up. Oh, bear with me. Here we go.
By woke CEOs and a weak... I don't want to be told by woke CEOs and a weak Prime Minister that I can't celebrate Australia Day. I want to celebrate Australia Day, and I want to stand there with those new citizens who have come from a country and they want a future for themselves, for their children, their grandchildren. That's the great Australian migrant story. Why would we be ashamed of that? We should be talking more about it. As Prime Minister, I will make sure that we have national pride again, that we're proud of who we are as a country, that we celebrate our history, good and bad. We have an incredible future if we embrace it and if we bring our country together. But we can't do that if we're asking people to sit under different flags and in different tribes and different communities. We are one Australian people. And we celebrate diversity, celebrate our wonderful Indigenous heritage and our incredible migrant story. But we will not be truly united when we're not living under one flag.
Yeah, some good things there said by the opposition leader, really putting it out there, his stance prior to the election that's coming up. And it's interesting that he's picking on the kind of the Australian identity as a running point, and saying that, if he's elected, he will make sure that all the councils will reinstate their citizenship ceremonies. So, we've seen over the last couple of decades, these kind of woke councils especially, moving more and more away from celebrating Australia Day at all. You go past many of these councils, like the City of Yarra and so on, who is notorious. and they don't even have the Australian flag up. They'll have the Aboriginal flag, the Torres Strait Islander flag. They'll have the flag for refugees, the flag for transgender people, the flag for the gay communities. They'll have all those flags, but they won't have the Australian flag. And a part of that whole push by these woke councils has been to remove Australia Day citizenship ceremonies. So, he's saying that he'll reinstate the ceremonies within the first 100 days of government. And this is kind of what Australia is. If you think about our politics, Trump is saying things like, as soon as I'm elected, I'll end the war with Russia and Ukraine, or I'll stop the war with Israel and Gaza. This is what the US politics is talking about. I know we have serious issues in Australia as well, but he's saying that when he becomes prime minister, within 100 days, we'll have citizenship ceremonies again. Like, that's kind of where our identity is in this country. It's being challenged. So it's interesting that Dutton is now, in this kind of posture to make this his platform as well. And I know people have mixed views of Peter Dutton, but the alternative in Albanese is, not someone that is at least his party. I don't know, individually he says some things where it looks like he supports Australia and doing his duty, but deep down, I'm not sure about the whole Labor movement as a whole. I think they're more down the path of cancelling Australia Day and getting rid of Australia Day and appeasing, the people that they believe that they'll lose. A lot of these radicals that go over to the Greens and these socialist parties completely want to see Australia Day removed and, the whole Australian story destroyed. So, and on that, speaking about radicals and extremists when it comes to Australia Day, this was quite disturbing from a few days ago. And I'm sharing this story from Drew, but it was in the Daily Telegraph. And it was this anti-Israel activist, Elsa Tuet Rosenberg, who calls for violence on Australia Day, set fire to Cook's Cottage, chop down their European trees, set fire to their heritage sites, behead their statues, F up their war memorial. I mean, these people are unhinged. And she's part of this kind of whole pro-Palestine movement, anti-Israel activist, but you can see it's kind of melded in. She also hates Australia, the identity of Australia, and she wants to encourage people to carry out these acts of terrorism, really domestic terrorism, to deface the war memorial and set fire to Cook's Cottage in Fitzroy Gardens, which I believe is a replica anyway, but, they really want to set fire to that one. And this is just an unhinged individual. Allegedly, this is what she said. I'll try to zoom in on this post so we can see more of it. It's just over 2 weeks until Invasion Day. Go and play Snatch the Flag. So just take random flags, burn all the flags. It's crazy. Destroy colonial monuments. Okay. Someone go and set fire to Cook's Cottage. Why hasn't that statue in St. Kilda been chopped back down yet? Go and destroy monuments to colonization, all of them. Chop down their European trees. Now these environmentalists all of a sudden want to chop down the European trees because, it's the European trees which are the real problem in Australia. And behead their statues or topple them at their base. F up their dumb war memorial, which glorifies Western imperialism while refusing to acknowledge the frontier wars. Universities, suburbs, streets, shops, etc., named after genocidal colonizers, F them up too. So this is quite extreme. And this is, someone who should be looked into by authorities. I'm not sure if they are. Of course, we're lenient now when it comes to these left-wing radicals. I don't know if you remember during the COVID times, they were arresting pregnant mothers for putting stuff on Facebook just about exercising, free speech, right? They took down Monica Smith for incitement. They took down Topper Field for incitement just for the mere act of potentially doing a political protest where people were just gathering. But here you have this left-wing extremist activist advocating for acts of violence, terror, burning things down, chopping trees down, all publicly inciting people to do this. And I don't know what's happened to her. It is quite extreme, the lengths that these people will go to. And I think, honestly, we will see some type of statues being taken down. Hopefully, they stay away from all of this. especially something like the War Memorial in terms of defacing it, burning things down. It's just crazy. But unfortunately, you know, these radicals, you've seen them now week after week, protesting all manner of things, and there is a cohort within there that really do hate Australia, and she's a part of that group. If these alleged comments which have been attributed to her tell that story, yeah, intense. And that brings me to the next thing, which is also a socialist candidate that's running for parliament in an upcoming election, a Victorian socialist candidate. And he was in this video. Now he's kind of backtracked a little bit and said he's kind of talking about political theory, and you know, socialist theory and all these kind of things. But if you listen to his comments, he's glorifying the murder of a CEO in America, the healthcare CEO, and he's saying that, you know, in a roundabout way, that individual acts of terror might not be as effective. It's better working within a group. It's very murky, the things that he's saying, especially because he's coming from an angle where he's at first glorified the murder of that CEO. And this is someone that's seriously running for political office in Victoria, and most likely the Labor Party will give preferences to. So let's have a listen to this socialist and what they have to say. His name is Jordan Van Den Lam.
Just by killing a few CEOs. We need to do way more.
South Africa. So I think we should deport him, to be honest. You know what? You tell me your reaction.
We cannot overthrow capitalism just by killing a few CEOs. We need to do way more than that. We cannot defeat a government by killing a government minister. There needs to be a massive struggle to defeat a government, to defeat a system of capitalism. You can't just kill a person. That's not how it works. I feel like some of the discourse around what Luigi's done is, oh, you know, we can defeat this. We can overthrow them if we just kill a few CEOs. No, they'll just be replaced. I wouldn't encourage people to do individual acts of terror. I would encourage them to join a group that is organised and organising and get involved. Places like Rahu, join the Palestinian protests wherever you can, meet with people, get involved, see what they're trying to do, and join them. Our power does not come from individuals doing things on their own. Our power comes from us doing things as a group and collectively. That's what they're scared of. They're not really scared of this. The thing that most upsets capitalism is us stopping the flow of capital. Unfortunately, Luigi didn't stop the flow of capital, but he did stop, you know, one CEO. And I think that's on the whole a good thing. But my preference would be for us to stop the flow of capital as a group, organised and collectivised. So yeah, a few people have asked, like, why haven't I denounced, you know, what Luigi did and whatever? And that's because I don't think what he did was entirely bad.
What do you make of...
We don't need to hear Avi's opinion on it. But look, this is the type of individuals we're seeing more and more talking openly now. Even in Australia, we saw it in America and we thought, oh, you know, it's these American left-wing extremists. But you're seeing them here as well. And again, glorifying the murder of a CEO. Now, he might not politically align with the healthcare CEO's views or whatever. He might find all types of questionable things about the healthcare industry. But typically, that does not mean we endorse the public execution-style deaths of CEOs. That is not the type of society that we live in. You can't just have a political grievance and go kill someone to make political change. Now, people, of course, do that, and that is an act of domestic terrorism. And those are things that we do not accept in our types of societies. So these individuals who represent themselves as holier than thou, you know, everyone else is bad, or look at the evil right, all this nonsense, oh, Donald Trump is so evil, Orange Man bad, how can he do these things? They're just openly saying that murder is good if it achieves their political aims. And in a roundabout way, this individual is also saying, you know, committing acts of terrorism by yourself isn't that as effective. You know, get into a group. What that leads to, I don't know, because if this is coming from someone who's glorifying death. So in a group situation, of course, you can have a whole group of people organized committing acts of terror. And exactly what he's insinuating is hard to say. Okay, I don't want to go down that path. But based on his language, people are interpreting in this way. And I even saw that he was picked up by some, not just Avi, but some mainstream outlets as well that were talking about this particular story when it comes to this socialist. So, you know, Andrew Bolt, I know he's probably not a favorite of this particular socialist, but he was talking, a Victorian socialist backs candidate who says murdering opponents isn't all bad. I don't know what the ramifications for this type of individual was, but for sure, if someone who was right-leaning or in the Liberal Party had made some comment about, hey, it's okay to kill these people because they don't align with us politically, these are the same type of people that would be jumping up and down saying how bad that is. But apparently it's okay. You know, apparently their hero, Luigi, that killed the healthcare CEO, well, he deserved it. You know, that's what it is. Someone was saying he was on Bolt tonight, so I got to watch that maybe. So if they had him on, that might be interesting. He was on Bolt. I think you mean he was talking about him. Yeah. Yeah. What a dickhead. Yeah, I agree. These people have no common sense. So let's have a read of Sean's comment. Is it radical to be against genocide? Isn't that just a normal thing to do? What is so radical about not wanting thousands of children to be slaughtered? Well, it's not radical to be against genocide. All decent people, of course, are against acts of genocide and war crimes and things like this. You know, whatever you're saying doesn't necessarily make sense. What is radical, though, is to have such a position and then at the same time to say that committing acts of violence in Australia against people here today justifies all of that. That's not how it works. Just because something's happening overseas or something happened in Australia historically doesn't mean that today you will go around, you know, setting Captain Cook's cottage on fire. That's not acceptable. That's just the craziest way of thinking, and that actually what leads to a uncivil society. And of course, I know these far left-wing socialist type individuals, they don't see it like that. They revel in the anarchy that they can create, the chaos that they can create, the devastation that they could set upon society by doing these type of things, because they believe it helps them achieve their political aims. And that is almost a textbook definition of domestic terrorism, especially when those acts are directed towards the public. And the moment that you deface things like a war memorial or burn down buildings to achieve your aims, well, you are then attacking the public at large. There you go. It has everything to do with Australia. We are complicit when we sell weapons that kill those children. The IDF receive intelligence directly from Pine Gap that assists them. Look, Australia is involved with their allies. And again, I'm not opposed to people protesting against Australia's involvement in a war. There's nothing wrong with protesting against Australia's involvement in a war. When that crosses a line in terms of terrorizing people here, because you know not everyone's out there on the streets with you. This is a small minority of people. I know everyone says that it's everyone, but it's not. Over time, it's even gotten even smaller. And whatever the nobility of what you're doing doesn't necessitate the reason for you to terrorize everyone else. I just don't agree with that. Someone saying Hamas started it. Yeah, look, I wasn't really getting into the whole Israel, Hamas, Gaza, all this kind of stuff. I was just talking about the attacks within Australia. And I know these left-wing activists, I'm repeating myself, but they kind of feel that they have a license to attack the rest of us because of their particular concern. And that's just not on. What is your name? My name is Rukshan Fernando. All right, guys, let's just keep going with these stories. Let me know if there's any stories that you think I should cover today. I will actually, let's just jump onto the X itself and see what people are talking about in real time. Let's have a look if there's anything interesting while I check out your comments as well. I need to put some music in the background while I'm doing this. There's a lot of things on X right now related to Andrew Tate. There is a bit of a discussion happening between especially within the right of politics, especially the MAGA groups, who some of them seem to endorse Andrew Tate by having them on his shows, whereas other people are saying that he's bad news and he goes against all types of Christian values and all types of things that conservatives stand for. So he's a very dubious character. I don't want to spend too much time talking about Andrew Tate, but there's a lot of things on Andrew Tate right now. The other story actually I've seen is TikTok's actually being closed. I don't know if you guys use TikTok, who's watching. Maybe some of you guys do. It's been shut down in America as it stands right now on the 19th, of Jan. And what's happened since it's being shut down in America, there's a lot of these kind of left-wing individuals that, or even right-wing maybe, but a lot of left-wing individuals in America that love TikTok. That's kind of their safe space. And they did freak out when there were rumors circulating that Elon Musk might actually be purchasing, or China might want to sell TikTok to Elon Musk. There was a bit of a freak out happening. And anyway, it looks like this whole deal with TikTok, they might not actually find a potential buyer in time. And it's led a lot of these left-wing Americans that are on the platform to sign up to this new Chinese social media platform, exclusively Chinese, called Redbook. And they are finding that they really enjoy being on a Chinese social media platform. They're learning the language. They're engrossing themselves in all things China. And they're making some very interesting videos as they leave TikTok and join this Chinese Redbook platform, this social media platform. It's almost like a Chinese version of Instagram/TikTok together. And these progressive Americans are moving there. And many of them are sharing their stories of going over to Redbook. So let's have a listen to this one particular person.
我要講是美國政府引起 TikTok 導演。我是要紅書上係網友找到了公共嘅發生物，有很多中國朋友找了很多些，這些公會沒有你們，這一切都不可能實現。我愛中華人民共和國。
Yeah, so that's one example. And look, one of the issues, I think one of the broader issues with TikTok that's discussed, especially in the US and Australia, is the fact that it's almost like a Chinese operation of, sabotaging the West by corrupting the minds of the youth in the West, like this kind of subvertive way of doing this, right? And, you see TikTok in China, they don't have the type of content that we have in Australia or the United States of America, for instance. And it is much more wholesome, the content that you get in China, compared to the somewhat out there content, especially a lot of things about gender and changing sex, and a part of our free speech expression in the West, but you don't get that in China. So one of the issues that a lot of people have raised about China owning TikTok and running it is the fact that they're trying to subvert Western populations. Well, now that we've gotten rid of TikTok, well, on the 19th at least, it's going away in America, apparently. You have these leftists in China, in America, already, welcoming their new Chinese overlords, right? They're already learning the language, they're already accepting the culture. And I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but it's just interesting how quickly that happens. Let's have a look at another video that I saved from this Redbook lot as well. And you might see across the next couple of days, more and more people talking about Redbook. So if you're wondering what it is this Chinese social media company.
Listen, I didn't think that the culture shock of joining Rednote would be
Rednote, sorry.
Grocery hauls. Chinese grocery hauls are insane because they can actually afford food. You guys. What one woman, it would have cost me.
So this particular American woman is, her eyes have been open to the fact that now she's on Rednote. Sorry, it's Rednote, not Redbook, Rednote. She's seen all the videos of Chinese malls where people are, purchasing food and stuff, and it's a lot cheaper than in America. So she's saying like her eyes have been opened. And maybe there's some truth to that, like maybe the way that people have access to food in China in supermarkets, or at least those who are affluent or, a middle class, to be using those type of facilities, maybe it is better than in the West. But doesn't this feel like the operation to subvert the minds of Americans kind of is working? I don't know. I'd love to know your thoughts on this as well. again, I'm not going to be joining up to Red Note. I've even stayed away from TikTok mostly. I do have an account there, but I'm not really a massive fan of the, I guess, the foreign nature of it. I know Donald Trump's recently started using it, and even Threads, which is owned by Instagram, Zuckerberg. I only recently started going back onto it after he took the knee and kissed Trump's hand, right? So he bent the knee. I kind of pick my platforms like this. I tend to support more free speech platforms, and TikTok did, at least during COVID, at least, have a massive censorship issue as well. I'm just going to try to get to some of your comments as well, but let's keep going through X and see what people are talking about. Someone's asking me if I am a Christian. Yes, I am a Roman Catholic by birth. So are you a Christian, Rukshan? So my family, as you can tell from my surname, Fernando, that is not a very Southeast Asian sounding surname, Fernando. It's more of a Portuguese surname. So when the Portuguese came to Sri Lanka and colonized the country, or part of the country, I think in the 1500s maybe, or late 1400s, so long time ago, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Since about that time, generations of my family have been Roman Catholic, and the towns that you go to is just churches. So I went to like a year of or a couple of weeks of prep in a school. It was called St. Joseph Vaz, the school. That's what school that my dad went to, so Joseph Vaz College. So this is all a part of that kind of history melding together. Then this is before, I think, the Dutch and the British were involved in Sri Lanka as well. So let's have a look at what's happening on X. This Chase has got a meme of some sort. There's only room for one right-wing billionaire controlling everything around here. Albo warns Elon Musk not to intervene in Australia elections. That's Rupert's job. And actually, that's the funniest thing when we're talking about election interference. I mean, the left always, to some degree, mentions Rupert Murdoch and his media empire and the influence that it has. And, a lot of the times these Australian prime ministers, they will have dinner with Rupert before or after an election and things like this. So, to say that there has never been foreign involvement in Australian elections is quite crazy. Catholicism is pagan sun worship. Okay. I mean, yeah. I'm not going to spend time trying to defend religious type of issues. But yeah, there is a massive disconnect within the Catholic community at the moment in terms of if you compare Catholics in parts of Asia and Latin America, and of course the more radical style Catholicism that you're seeing today from the Pope and some of the new more progressive type of Catholics that you have pushing all these kind of progressive things as well. So there is a bit of a change happening within the Catholic faith for sure. Lucy's saying, I went to a Catholic school taught by nuns with big canes. Yeah. Yes, I remember a little bit of, I think, kindergarten or schooling in Sri Lanka. And yes, even at that age, the teacher would have a stick and you'd have to put your hand out and they would give you a few smacks. Why can't we swear on this channel political correctness? If you're on YouTube, it might just be the YouTube filters themselves. So YouTube is quite strict on their algorithm. So it's not really something that I'm doing. It's just the way the system's set up. They might have just by default some type of filtering on the comments. But look, guys, thanks for joining in on the show today. I will be here for another 10 minutes or so, taking any questions that you guys have and answering anything like that while I browse through X. If I see anything interesting, I will stop and chat with you guys about what I'm reading. But as of now, it's quite, doesn't seem to be much happening interesting wise. Let's just leave this video on here, whatever this is. This is China. Let's have a look at modern China. And I'll just get to your comments. Can you overlay the chats on the opposition podcast show? I like it. Yeah, I mean, I think we would like to do that. I use a slightly different system when I do my this show than what we use for the opposition podcast. It's almost the same system, but it's slightly different. I really love the idea of having comments on the screen and interacting with people, because it kind of gives me different ideas about what I'm talking about. Obviously, the input of you guys who are watching that have different views and sometimes might know more than me on a topic as well. So it's cool to be able to bring that up there, and just having it on the side is actually very cool. I know some people are hesitant to put comments on as well because you don't know what people are going to say. Do you ever get sick of RV constantly justifying genocide? I mean, this is the thing. So depending on who you speak to, people have different interpretations of what is happening in this war. Not everyone sees it as an act of genocide. That's a description that's used by one side of the debate. I know it's not a debate to some people. It's a very real thing that impacts their ethnic group of people, their country, or whatever the way they see it. But in terms of the way the international community looks at it, the way that it's discussed in politics, not every side views it in those same terms. So Avi being an Israeli having a particular view is not surprising to me. This is a part of the experience of living in Australia. I talk to many people from different countries who are at war. Especially growing up in Dandenong, I went to school with so many different cultures, and there were so many different groups that had come as refugees, especially during the wars in Bosnia and Serbia and parts of Kosovo and Albania and things like this. So I was with all these different groups, and depending on who you asked about the situation from those countries, they will tell you two different stories. And that is largely the Australian experience when you live in a multicultural type of community, a multiracial, multi-ethnic community. People will have disagreements and different views of what's happening. And what someone says is genocide, the other person will say that's not a genocide. So if you talk about the Armenian genocide, for instance, there's a lot of people within Turkish communities who will deny that ever happened. But if you talk to Armenians or people that are a part of that, whatever, they will say yes, it was definitely a genocide. So for me, I'm kind of an Australian. If I talk to people about the civil war that was in my country, again, people will have different views on that, and I've seen it firsthand growing up in a country that's had a civil war, and where these claims of genocide and things have been made. And I've heard all types of different things from all different ethnic groups involved in that conflict as well. So these labels which are attributed during a wartime is not something that I look to judge people on necessarily. I have my own views and own thoughts on it. That's a different thing. But what other people say is not necessarily something that I'm going to judge someone on. I just don't want Australia involved. It has nothing to do with us. Yeah, I mean, no one really wants Australia involved in any kind of foreign wars. The only reason that we involve ourselves in foreign conflict, which we have done, even going back to our very earliest wars, that was we were kind of much closer to the British Empire during that time. But it's really been at the behest of other countries as allies. And there's strategic reasons for it. There's reasons that Australia is involved in these type of alliances that might not be as evident initially straight away. But, ideally, yes, it's great that Australia would not be involved in any of these conflicts. And most countries that are involved in a war wouldn't have a multicultural community or a society to deal with these type of things. So if you're looking at a country in the Middle East, well, they're not dealing with these kind of issues because, it's usually just one type of cultural group or religious group that lives in these countries. Whereas in Australia, we have to kind of deal with the fact that we have a large Jewish population. We have a large, Arab, Muslim, Palestinian community that are very worried about what's happening there. And that's just a part of living in this type of multi-racial ethnic community. Lucy went to school in Dandenong as well. There you go. I went to Dandenong High School, Dandy High, in the 90s. And that was a very interesting education in life. I will tell you that much. That was, very, I don't regret it whatsoever. I think that kind of made me a lot more street smart and exposed to so many different things, as you can imagine, the demographics of Dandenong and the things that were happening in Dandenong around the 90s. Have you ever looked into the prevalence of role of activists, NGOs weaponizing issues to push agendas or their own worldview? Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, I've dealt with a civil war in Sri Lanka, the country that my parents come from, and the same thing. Like if you speak, depending on who you speak to, they'll have different views on institutions like the UN. They'll have different views on the fact that people are claiming genocide. They'll have different views on these NGOs. And a lot of them will say that they don't care about what they say. They don't represent them. It's not their country. They don't want their involvement, and they don't see them as any type of legitimate form of, institution when it comes to interfering in the affairs of the country. And I've seen that position taken multiple times by other countries during civil wars or during just wartime. You see it time and time again. And it's like no different this time around. Of course, Israel, Palestine, this kind of conflict is something that's discussed all around the world, and it's a historical issue, and it involves a lot of complexities, which means that we look at it, in this kind of through a microscope almost. And the views and the opinions that people share are dissected. They're used to form, other views of that individual, and if he's a good or bad person. So, this just unfortunately, this particular issue is very polarizing, and it's just how it is. I don't think it's going to be like that. And hopefully, you would want it to kind of come to an end, but it's been going on for so long, and if you look at the history, maybe even thousands of years in a way, that I don't see an end to it really. So we're just dealing with that. Versal says Israel is an apartheid and is committing genocide, period. Facts don't care about your culture or your ethnicity. Also, Avi is a Zionist. Yeah, I mean, even that kind of the whole debate, I think most people that believe in the state of Israel's right to exist is a Zionist. So Zionism in itself is just the belief that Israel, should exist in that space. So yeah, Avi would say that he's a proud Zionist. It's not really kind of like a gotcha type thing that people say. I don't understand that whole thing. Someone's asking me what the spiral walk is. I just left it on the there. I was going through X. It's no particular reason. I was just answering some of the questions that people were having asked of me. So maybe I'll change to something else. Again, look, this is an interesting story. We're talking about conflict, we're talking about war, and they're saying that this particular gentleman from Melbourne, Oscar Jenkins, who went to fight in the Ukrainian army, and now in this instance, we're an ally of Ukraine. We provide weapons to them, arms to them as well, and we have these Australians going over and fighting. We did see a video of this guy a few weeks ago where he looked, it's if you're his family in Australia looking at this video of this individual who's been captured by what looks like the Russian forces, and it's disturbing as a parent watching something like that, and to think that he came from like suburban Melbourne and he didn't really have to be there, but he's gone over there to fight this thing for whatever reason because he believes in the cause, and it's a part of this. Now they're saying that he's dead. And it's complicated because he was captured by the Russians. So, even as an Australian who's fighting with the Ukrainians, he's technically fighting for an allied army. Even though it's illegal to do what he did, I guess he's still fighting for a recognized army, and he was a prisoner of war from the videos. It looks like. So Australia's now putting the pressure on to say, how did this happen? Is he dead? If he's dead, what can we do to punish the Russians and all these kind of things. So this is the kind of complexities of the world that we live in. Some people will say, why this individual went there at all? And I tend to agree with that. But at least in this particular person's instance, whatever you think of him, at least instead of just, terrorizing people on the streets here maybe and, taking issue with people here, he's gone over there and he's decided to fight for the cause that he believes in. Now, whatever you make of that is up to you, and people have different views. but at least he's done that much. So I can't, dig on the guy for doing that. Of course, fighting for an ally of Australia is very different than going to fight for an enemy of Australia, which is more of a traitorous type of activity. So it's very different to going overseas and fighting for ISIS, for instance, who is an enemy of our country, and they're fighting against the West and fighting against Australian interests. It's a bit different when you're fighting for an allied nation. And I believe there is provisions, though, even though that is technically, there's a legal area there, people can, if they really want to, do that. There is someone writing to me in, this is actually, if you guys are watching, this is actually Sinhalese script, but I don't actually know how to read Sinhalese. So there you go. That's how westernized, Australianized I am. I have no idea what that says. I can speak a little bit of the language just to get by when I travel, if I go there, but like otherwise I'm just like any other tourist. I have no idea what that says in Sri Lankan. So Dasun, I apologize. You could be insulting me. You could be saying something nice to me. I have no idea. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining me for another episode of Rukshan on X. It's been fun, like always. Now, tomorrow I'll be back at 7 p.m., I believe, with the Opposition podcast with Avi Yemeni. So make sure you tune into that. I should also give a plug for Avi's show that goes on Tuesdays, the Yemeni Report. You can check that out as well. That's around, I think, 7 p.m. And you can find information on that on Avi's X or his Rebel News website. In terms of where you can find information about what I'm up to, well, you can follow me on X at The Real Rukshan, on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Rumble, Odyssey, and also my website, www.realrukshan.com. I might actually show you my website because I am updating it and fixing it up and just kind of adding everything in there just so you guys know that I do have a website if you want to use that instead of going to find my content somewhere else. And it's good because you can actually go search there and find a whole heap of stuff. So let's bring it up. This is my website there. You can see it automatically uploads my latest videos. It's all done automatically, so it's very cool. And you'll see I share some of my tweets on there as well now. And the other cool thing is you can go search and type in different topics. So if you want to find out my views on Israel, for instance, you can type in Israel and it'll show you all the videos and points and protests I've covered and whatnot. So that's cool. I've also done a live stream archive. So if you go to live stream archive, you could actually find every single live stream that I've done, going back to the early days of COVID. And this has been put on Odyssey, so which is a bit more of like a blockchain style censorship-free video platform. So I believe it'll be there, hopefully forever in some way. But you can find all my old protests. So they've been, just in case Facebook deletes it or whatever, I've made sure that I've put it down on these platforms. So you can find all of that there if you want to go down memory lane as well. But again, guys, thank you so much for joining in for another episode of Rukshan on X. I will see you next time, but make sure you check out the Opposition podcast tomorrow at 7 p.m. Take care, guys.